We're joined now by Mathew Hulbert from the Liberal Democrats in Leicestershire, who advises his party on policy on youth services. Welcome, Mathew.
Hi.
Well, we saw, didn't we, in that film just then, how much young people are getting from that youth centre in Leicestershire. But we also heard that 10,000 youth worker jobs have gone since 2010. And in 2010, of course, the Liberal Democrats were part of a coalition which started those cuts in the name of austerity. So here we are.
Yes, and I don't think that was our proudest moment, but what my party would say was that the economy was in a difficult situation that had to be sorted out. But do I think it was right for those services to be cut? No, I clearly don't, and that's why in those years and since, I've campaigned with others in my party to say, actually, cutting youth services, you can do that, and that might help your bottom line as a council for a moment, but the young people don't go away. Their needs don't go away. They just end up having to turn to other services, which may, in the end, actually cost the economy more.
Or not having anywhere to turn to at all.
Or not having anywhere to turn to at all. And that is why, you know, I'm pleased to see that Joe Swinson and Ed Davey have committed the Liberal Democrats to, if we were to form a government or be part of a government, to reinvest in youth services and to have that statutory underpinning, which is so important. I mean, the reason why councils have been able to say, you know, we've got to make savings, what can we cut? Oh, youth services, is because they've not been statutory, so they have been able to cut them. And so I think having that statutory underpinning, which we would bring in if we got into government, would be so important.
OK, well, let's bring in Ruth Edwards here. Are the Conservatives going to include something on youth services in your manifesto?
Yes, we certainly are. I was really pleased to see the Chancellor announce a £500 million package at a Conservative Party conference to build new youth centres, refurbish existing ones, and to help young people into jobs. And I think it's got to be seen in the round of that as well. You know, we've seen youth unemployment halved since 2010, and we've also seen 388,000 new apprenticeship starts here in the East Midlands. I think that's really fantastic.
But it was your government, wasn't it, that brought in these cuts, which now we're hearing Mathew Hulbert's party want to reverse?
Well, as I've said, we want to increase our spending now that we are in an economic situation where we can do so. Nobody goes into public life wanting to cut public services. Jeremy Corbyn says austerity was a political choice. It wasn't. It was an economic necessity, because the Labour Party, by their own admission, had spent all the money. Now we're in a place where we can invest more. That's what we're doing. I'm thrilled to see Sajid Javid's announcement. Youth services was something that were really important to me growing up. In my family, I went to a local youth club. It was fantastic, and I want to support those, I can't say my constituency, so across the East Midlands, I want to support youth services there, and I will be.
Well, Nadia, the Conservatives say they're putting in £500 million into youth services. Labour says it would rebuild those services, but how much will you put in, and how would you be able to do that as a party?
Firstly, let's bust that myth that austerity was an economic necessity. Austerity was a political choice. To say that it was an economic necessity when the Conservatives have failed on their promises on debt and the deficit, whilst services have been cut and whilst children have been plunged into poverty, is an absolute insult to people. In terms of Labour's promises, we'll have our manifesto soon. That manifesto will contain a series of spending promises, and like the last time, it will be fully costed. You'll remember that in the 2017 election, Labour's manifesto was the only manifesto to be fully costed. But we will be investing in youth services because, as we've heard from young people over in Leicester in the East Midlands, investment really is the only way that we can solve the mental health crisis, the knife crime crisis, and for the Conservatives to cut these services to the bone and then to sprinkle in a bit more money at the time of an election.
It's
just extremely...
It's a drop in the ocean. It's a drop in the ocean. Now, I welcome, you know, I want to see youth services restored, so I welcome the commitments from all the parties that whoever gets in this time, or whatever combination of parties, we're likely to see that investment in youth services. I think that's important. But much more than that has been cut. So it's a start from the Conservatives, but it doesn't go anywhere near enough. These young people are absolutely desperate for these services to be brought back. It's not just about, playing ping pong. It's about having professional youth workers
that have
been trained by the National Youth Agency and that are able to develop meaningful relationships with young people who are facing so many issues and problems
And we were
today.
talking, weren't we, in this discussion about, the impact that these services can have on preventing young people going into crime. And, we hear that knife crime's rising, but overall crime involving young people has been falling since the 1990s. In the last 10 years, it's actually fallen by 80%. And that actually is despite cuts to the youth services.
But we're also seeing knife crime. We've seen it in my patch, which I won't mention the place, but sadly we're seeing it across the East Midlands, not just in London. And these are lives being lost, and it's an absolute tragedy. Now, are youth services the total answer to that? No, of course they're not. We need more police and other things as well. But certainly, as I've said, when you cut these services, the young people don't go away. They're still there. Their needs are still there.
OK, quick one, Matthew. We spoke earlier, didn't we, about the Liberal Democrats not fielding a candidate in Broxtowe against Anna Soubry. Not everyone in the party will be happy about that.
Well, I've not heard that. I mean, maybe you're hearing from different people than I am, but I think the Liberal Democrats are a sensible adult party that recognise that where there's a leading Remain candidate that's not in most seats, the leading Remain candidate, the only Remain candidate will be the Liberal Democrats, but in that constituency with Anna Soubry, clearly she's the leading Remain candidate. It would be silly for us to stand and split that
so
vote.
You've made that decision accordingly. Well, let's move on to what the week ahead has got in store for us and get Tony Rowe back in to tell us more. So, tell us more.
Tell you more.
Please.
Right, tomorrow, we forget MPs are still at Parliament for a couple of more days. Ken Clarke, as Father of the House, will actually take the Speaker's chair as they elect the new Speaker. MPs will be packing up. We'll be seeing some of them packing up, filming them next week. Among them, Alan Duncan, Rutland and Melton MP. They select his replacement next Friday, so there are still some places where we don't have MP selected. And it's going to be an important week too for Labour and what happens with Chris Williamson and Keith Vaz. Will they be on the party ticket at the next election? And on the issue of Keith Vaz, if we can just look back to the week, and a remarkable spat between Andrew Bridgen, who made the complaint against Keith Vaz, and the Speaker, John Bercow. Now, Andrew Bridgen has a history with Keith Vaz, he has a history with the Speaker, and it all boiled over on the Speaker's
Certainly
last day.
did.
Thank you once again for more help and advice, Mr. Speaker.
The gentleman will resume his seat. It's not help and advice. I'm telling the honourable gentleman what the position is. Don't mix it with the chair.
To the fag end of your tenure in that chair, you are defending the indefensible and your very close relationship with the honourable member in question. The House can come to its own conclusions. The Standards Committee has come to its own conclusions, and, Mr. Speaker, the public will come to theirs. Thank you very much.
I'm quite sure the public will come to its own conclusion. Let me say to the honourable gentleman, he can try to smear me. He will get the square root of nowhere.
Speaker always has the last word.
He certainly did there. So it's a crucial week ahead. Mind you, we've been saying that for weeks,
We've been saying that for
haven't
a long time, and there's one thing we might hear about next week. It was meant to happen on the day of the budget, November the 6th. We were meant to hear whether HS2 is going to get the go-ahead, which, as you say, is a crucial decision for the East Midlands and our infrastructure.
Yeah, so have we managed to put either of you two off so far?
Not yet. No,
It doesn't look like it, no? It's still very determined to press on. Good,
Yes,
glad to hear
definitely.
it.
We'll still be out on those doorsteps.
You will be out
in
on
the
those
rain.
doors. All sorts of
wellies.
weather, absolutely, yeah. It's not easy, is it, the Christmas election?
Well,
a winter election?
Well, none of us knows. It's 1923. It's nobody knows what a December election is like.
Well, it's going to be cold.
Not even Dennis Skinner.
Oh, right. OK, fair enough. That is all for this week. Thanks to Ruth Edwards, Nadia Whitome and Mathew Hulbert for joining us in the studio. Thank you to you for watching. From all the team here, enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Goodbye.